Survivor, written by Chuck Palahniuk, is a dark and satirical comedy published in 1999, and it is not your typical story. The novel opens with a dramatic scene where Tender, our narrator and the last surviving member of a Creedish church cult, explains to us how he had just hijacked a plane. What an entrance. What a beginning. Tender speaks into a recorder, telling us all of his life events before the plane of Flight 2039 is headed to crash somewhere in Australia. Tender shares the story he wants everyone to hear before he commits suicide on this crashing plane. Along with other church members, Tender is forced to go into the modern-day society, or as they call it, the outside world, in order to work and earn money for the cult. These jobs range from cooking to cleaning and are typically very domestic jobs. One day, the Creedish church had informed its followers that Deliverance Day had come, and it was time for all of them to end their lives in order to be delivered into heaven. Now, after hearing this information, everyone in the Creedish church cult that was living in the modern-day society had decided they must kill themselves too in order to avoid going to hell. And within 10 years, Tender is the last surviving member. A local marketing company in modern-day society decide that they're going to use this to transform Tender into a spiritual leader across the nation. Tender reveals the pressures placed on him both in the Creedish church and in modern-day society through these experiences. Through being completely dedicated to the Creedish church cult, to being completely lonely and in solitaire, and how to survive in a society that's so different from how you were raised. The beginning of this story is the end, literally. It begins with chapter 47 on page 289 and ends on chapter 1, page 1, where we loop back to hearing about the hijacking of the plane and how it's crashing, and it actually ends with Tender midway through a sentence. This made the book a bit confusing at first because you didn't really know what was going on. How did he hijack the plane? Everything. He just goes right into talking about his life story from beginning right to the end, right back to where we started. But I actually found this very intriguing, and it made it even harder to put the book down. Palahniuk also has a really interesting writing style. It's very unique. He uses a lot of wit, simple sentence structure, and repetitive key points and ideas to get his message across. Here's an excerpt from Survivor to give you a taste of his writing style. There are only patterns. Patterns on top of patterns. Patterns that affect other patterns. Patterns hidden by patterns. Patterns within patterns. If you watch close, history does nothing but repeat itself. What we call chaos is just patterns we haven't recognized. What we call random is just patterns we can't decipher. What we can't understand we call nonsense. What we can't read we call gibberish. There is no free will. There are no variables. So as you can tell, his writing, although it's simple, it can be very heavy, and there's also some crude content and twisted appeal in his writing. If you've read any of his other novels, such as Fight Club, you would notice the same type of style. It's very similar to Kurt Vonnegut's satirical style of writing, which challenges the conventions and narrative structure. Palahniuk also likes adding social commentaries to his novels. Survivor critiques the nature of fame in America and the American dream. And Tender's journey to fame makes readers question what is real and what is fake in the media. Sometimes we get so blinded by our own life, and reading the ridiculous stories and ideas in this book makes you connect to real life and think, wow, it's not actually that different. Like, these ideas in real life can be quite crazy and quite unbelievable as well. Palahniuk also exposes the price one must pay in order to become famous. In today's society, it's not uncommon to hear that this celebrity got a nose job or that athlete is taking steroids. Tender goes to the same extent in order to be famous as many famous people in today's society do. He uses drugs, steroids, and even plastic surgery to appeal to the crowds. The characters are also very odd and interesting in this book. They all have a certain twist to them that makes them more intriguing. My favorite character was Fertility Hollis, who Tender meets at a cemetery. Her character is very complex. She starts off as a very shy and quiet, small girl that you wouldn't think has very many opinions or is very outspoken, but throughout her interactions with Tender, we realize more and more about this character, and she becomes more dynamic as each layer unfolds. We also learn that she has psychic abilities and becomes one of Tender's greatest influences. Although the Cretus church cult is fictitious, there's many real-life cults that it resembles and in its religious extremity. For example, the People's Temple, which upon order by their leader, over 900 people committed the greatest mass suicide of history by drinking poison-laced Kool-Aid. By no means is Survivor a light or easy read. However, it is one of my favorite books of all time. Survivor is the type of story that stays with you months or even years after reading it, just because you can connect so much of what Palahniuk's saying in the novel and apply it to your real life. Palahniuk succeeds in developing an exceptional storyline and critiquing modern-day society with a unique writing style. I very much enjoyed reading this book, and I hope you get the chance to as well.